Now let's come to the second one. How do we make our existing cities smart cities? So right now, if you have to see what's happening with Indian cities, you know there are huge amount of problems in terms of planning, transportation, energy conservation, lake protection, people, diversity. A lot of issues are there as far as cities are concerned. The McKinsey Institute report says that in India, all the cities have huge deficits as far as water supply is concerned, the sewerage, the way it is managed, the public transportation. We are absolutely nowhere when compared to the best in class. But we are not even adhering to the standards of service delivery. So we are very poor. In the coming few years, like the 2030 report says, it's going to become even worse. So where is the demon? First of all, when we are actually planning to improve cities, we need to know how to measure performance, right? So in Indian cities, the first pain point is where data is concerned. Now, how can we make intelligent cities when the data is incorrect and we have data problems itself? So we have issues right there. So the data has to be reliable, then we can make information out of that, and that can evolve into knowledge, and we can have knowledge society, knowledge cities, like what John Chambers was talking about. Now let me give you a couple of examples where we are actually messing up in terms of data. Now take a look at this. You know, every time a consulting company comes to India, they make huge presentations saying that there's huge opportunity in solid waste management. So they give us numbers. They tell you that Hyderabad generates 4 metric tons of garbage. Bangalore generates 6 metric tons of garbage. One is tempted to ask them, how did you get the numbers? You know why? Take a look at what happens in our cities. The garbage actually gets collected by these trucks. They go to the transfer stations. And from the transfer stations, they have to go to the landfills. Somewhere in the process, they have to dump the garbage on the weigh bridges to actually weigh how much of garbage is being generated. Right now in Indian cities, we don't have weigh bridges at all. So, you know how they calculate how much of garbage is getting generated? They take the number of trucks. They also take the capacity of the trucks. They multiply. They say Hyderabad has 400 trucks and the capacity is 10 tons. We generate 4 metric tons. So the trucks can go half full, or they can be, partially full, or they can be overflowing with garbage. Nobody actually knows the actual amount. So we have a data problem there. The McKinsey report also says that Indian cities will prosper if we can collect our property tax properly. We are all sitting here, all of us think that we are paying property tax, but the cities that are collecting property tax are not doing an efficient job. So almost 50% to 60% of the property tax is actually not assessed and not, they don't even collect. So the money that actually makes a city robust financially is not getting to them at all. So now what are we supposed to do here? How can we collect property tax? We can collect property tax if we know where the properties are, right? And the property maps, first of all, we will have to have a GIS-based map. And on the GIS-based map, you integrate the municipality data that gets generated, maintained separately. These two have to be integrated to even understand where the properties are, how big is the property, how much is the tax. But right now, we don't even have base maps in India. Though the Jawaharlal Nehru National Urban Renewal Mission has kicked off a sub-project where GIS is made mandatory, we still have problems because not much of movement has been seen in that area. Now, take a look at the GIS capabilities in India, extraordinary capabilities. In fact, some of our clients, when I had a corporate consulting firm, they were GIS people, and then I always used to wonder, why is it that they just do consulting assignments outside India? But, so right now, our Indian cities don't even have base maps. So we are stuck there. So how can we think of enhancing the property collections? Now, this is another big example. The McKinsey report says in water services, water supply, and sewerage, we have to collect O&M costs at least, the user charges. Even the World Bank insists on collecting user charges, right? Now take a look at what's happening in India. we have the cost recovery in water supply services is pretty poor. Barring Chennai and Bangalore, none of the cities is collecting the money. So Chennai is like 90 and 95 around that region. So the rest of them are pretty pathetic. Now we're talking about collecting money and user charges. You take a look at Hyderabad Water Board, they don't even know how many illegal connections are there. So again, we are coming back to the basic thing about data. We don't know how many legal connections are there. We don't know how many illegal connections are there. So what are we talking about collecting user fee? Now let's also assume that we know, then our billing is not efficient, by the way. Our billing is not efficient, our collection is not efficient. That's why there is a deficit of 500 crores for the water utility in Hyderabad. Now, how is the data collected? Supposing I am the municipal commissioner, under JNNURM, you are supposed to give data. Now, if I am the municipal commissioner, they come to me and they send me a format. They said, sir, please fill up how much garbage is collected in your city. So I conveniently mark 95% because I want to be a little modest about it. So I'll put 95. So there's data reliability is very poor. Now this is a study again conducted by one of the leading companies in the world, consulting companies. They collected this and they say that the data reliability as far as solid waste management is concerned is very poor. What you're seeing there, the dark blue is just reliable data. The rest of it can be chucked out. In water services as well, the reliability is very less. Now coming to service level benchmarks. Now that can be one of the toughest things because I remember in 2002 when I was a part of city development strategy for Hyderabad, which was sponsored by Cities Alliance. I was on the task force with the managing director of Water Board, and I used to periodically ask him, I said, why don't we do this, scientific assessment of service level standards? He used to just smile and keep quiet, and I was pretty young at that time to even question him so much. But now I know that different indicators are used under different initiatives, different definitions for the same indicator. It's unbelievable what happens. So even with the same definition, absence of uniformity in measurement and assessment. So we do have serious problems there. It's only now, after 5 years of JNNURM, we are designing templates for household service. Templates for household service. We are trying to understand how to get this aggregated data. We're trying to understand methodologies. Who do we train? How do we collect? So that is what is happening as far as data is concerned. So futuristic cities. Now let's come back to our smart cities. We have seen smart cities can be developed, as new babies, or we can rejuvenate the existing cities, but there is a data problem. There's a huge amount of problems. Now let's also understand how futuristic cities can be developed, and essentially they depend heavily on technology, as we've understood. So let's also see if there are technology-driven solutions for cities, what has been our past experience?